Our final speaker is Professor Marcus Specht. Please, Marcus, come to the podium. Marcus is a professor for advanced learning technologies and chairman of the Welten Institute at the Open University of the Netherlands and director of the Learning Innovation Labs. He has actually been working on a number of projects with KMI, including ProLearn, Stella, and WeSpot. And he's actually developing at the moment some very cool mobile technologies which enable children to become scientists in the field. So really, you should join KMI pretty soon, I would say. Over to you, Marcus.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a great honor to be here. And yeah, I also had the pleasure in the last 10, 15 years to work with colleagues from KMI in a lot of European projects, seeing a lot of familiar faces. So it's really being an honor speaking here. I take a different perspective now towards the end. Of course, it's always difficult. And but there was one word in the last quote we had just from Tom Gruber. It's about structure. But my home base is somehow different. So I'm cognitive psychologist. That's where I come from. But I also engineered systems and learned a bit about that. So I think it's all the time about learning different things and oops. Sorry, that's for later. And opening your perspective really in multidisciplinary fields. So I'm going to talk a bit about structure. And different things interest me about structure. And it's a lot about the work also we had together and we're now doing in the WeSpot project about inquiries and learning and sense making and using media. So I take a bit the perspective onto knowledge media about okay, knowledge is something that humans create, and how do we use these media to facilitate that and stimulate that process. And one thing is about curiosity, and this is the point where I got to think about structure. Actually, it's a quote I bring up at the end from Carl Jung. I heard last week in a jazz concert from Marilyn Mazur. She's a drummer, played with Miles Davis for some years, and she thinks a lot about structure and the microcosmos and the tension between chaos and structure. So that brought me a bit to chaos, and that is the interesting starting point for developing structures and developing knowledge, because I think that this feeling of unease, and if you take the quote here I've found about chaos, the idea of chaos here is more to feel unease. So humans typically feel not good with if there is no plan, there is no structure, so you must really rest in yourself to be confident with yourself, to not feel a tension about this. And this tension can lead to positive impact in that you get curious and you explore things because you want to know how this works. Yeah, there's a drive behind this. And this is one of the main things I found very interesting about knowledge media, if we get interested about these things. One short other anecdote from the first picture. This is the school where my son goes to. And my son is now 7. It's a Montessori school. It's a quite open concept. The interesting thing is always how these structures develop also in schools, how groups come together, and what are the drivers for students coming together. Also, what are the drivers in feeling bored? I'm bored, so if my son asks me, oh, Daddy, I'm bored. Yeah, okay, be bored a bit more, and then wait what develops. That's an interesting idea. I mean, okay, so my if you want to say my travel towards knowledge media or my take on it, is basically I started with intelligent tutoring system. That was one thing we talked shortly with Frank when we arrived here, or learning about Lisp programming. That is where my journey started a little bit, learning by example, linking things. So basically thinking about how the media, the technologies can adapt to the person. So a lot of my early work was about looking at adaptive systems, how adaptive instructional system adapt to humans, what they use for that. And it developed a bit further. And clearly in the last years, you say, and this would be a bit of the trend I want to look into, and I think Peter named it today, also the linkage between pedagogy, curiosity, and place. yeah, locations, because what you clearly see, of course, we're talking today about ubiquitous media, Internet of Things, so artifacts get distributed, they're stored somewhere, I don't care, I interact in different ways with these objects, and that's a very interesting also framework for looking at the research we're doing at the Welton Institute, but we always look at that, what does it change for humans being aware, having interesting discourse, reflect on their activities, having new experiences, and making sense of the world around them. So, very short one. Who knows this movie? Anyone idea? Her, yeah? And this is a scenario on a how you say, carnival. And the person works around with the interlinked system on the mobile phone, and basically the system guides him through. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't be guided away from the microphone. The system guides him through the whole carnival towards his favorite booth where he gets his favorite food. And if you think what is the engineering needed behind this, to make this experience happen, of course, you can talk about a lot of things, but I think the experience as such and also how it's drawn in this movie is a very interesting one. The interesting one is also, I think, if we talk about ubiquitous media, ubiquitous knowledge media, that in a lot of scenarios it's depicted very clear, very well designed. I have to say my idea about this is much more chaotic. Yeah, it's really like, and we'd seen this also today, and this is also the spirit I see a lot in the works of KMI, is this hacker mentality, life hacking. So you have to modify things to create different experiences and have different experiences. Okay, so a little bit about what approaches there are to link pedagogical approaches, pedagogical structures, and space. There's a very nice work, I'm really fascinated, from Australia again. This is a group really, and you can find it online, document, really mapping different curricular contexts, different pedagogical activities to space layouts. They looked at layouts of whole schools, floor plans of schools, different rooms. It's a bit like this whole discussion about flexible workspaces, but really linked to the educational activities taking place. And I think this is a very fascinating idea. And you can also do it the other way around. We tried that a little bit in a book that came out this year to look at different approaches for connecting these different locations where we learn today, also as lifelong learners, right? Considering time, I just mentioned 3 topics we try to do research in and we work together with KMI on. This is seamless learning design. We're doing a lot of work now in, for example, WeSpot, or inquiry-based learning, citizen inquiries. And there are a lot of questions about linking these different situations. And I will come to an example at the end and show you one system. What we also did together now is working on a system. We have a framework for mobile data collection, as we think fieldwork and data collection is at the core of one of these inquiries. And there's several works at the OU, also with IT. We have very nice links, and with KMI. So the open universities work together there in a broader sense. I just skipped the video here, it's too. So what does it mean to link things, right? Here's a very simple example, or we built a Glass application, Google Glass application, basically for doing inquiries. So the scenario would be, I would be interested, that is actually the scenario I think we did at the ECTEL conference. Are there more computer scientists or social scientists in this room? And then I would ask you to raise your hand. So I could have a hypothesis. I would say more computer scientists. Please, computer scientists, raise their hand. Okay, take photo, and then I would afterwards count your quotes, and I could record and document all this process just with my glasses on. So this is a bit the idea. You have a process, you implement the process in some technology that is easily wearable, easily interactable. It could be much easier than with our prototype here, but that's just the way to go. Another approach is to look at different ways of interaction, and I just show you a short video about one system we're working on. We do quite some work on sensors, because in ubiquitous computing, Internet of Things, of course, you have not anymore this idea of this is the main computer I interact with, but the computer is embedded in everyday objects and the things you work with. So we thought about why not use that for something you could practice every day at home, and we built a system for doing presentation trainings. It basically uses an array of sensors, and you stand in front of it and you give your presentation. You can just watch the video. Basically, the system has different modules for looking at your body posture, at your voice usage, pitch or volume. And the interesting thing is now we're having interviews with public training or public presentation trainers, and they basically see it as a tool for training at home. And then you come back and do this with your friends, for example, or you can record a session, and we're looking at different ways how to give feedback in this tool. That's the interesting, because actually you have the live data, so you can give a lot of different forms of feedback. So we're interested in how can we give best feedback for support the learning process. Okay, that's that one. A last topic, and that of course is related to a lot of things we heard today, is big data, open data, our perspective, and there's also a lot of work done here in the group on learning analytics. I give you a bit a different view on that. That is a school I'm really enthusiastic about to work with. It's the Nikkei school in Roermond. And what they do is they have several classes now of students that work without any schedule. They come in Monday morning, they have a coaching session, they have per class, per 30 students, they have 5 teachers from different subjects. And they use Scrum software development software, agile development software, to plan their learning process. So they use the Scrum software to learn their learning project for the week. And that can range from, okay, let's build a skateboard this week, to we want to know what happened in the third year war, right? Can be completely different. They distribute the tasks in the system. All their activities are documented in the system. They can attach snapshots or build a portfolio in the system when they assign solutions to these tasks. And of course, you can imagine that we can, or in the system, by documenting this, the whole process, you can analyze the whole process. So every week they have a planning session with their coaches and reflect on their learning process. And there I come back to the beginning, to structure. Because I think, and that is a bit my current state of the journey, developing the structure as a human and building tools, media tools, to support you building and manipulating and understanding this structure. This is for me at the core. But the human activity to build the structure, this is very, very important for the learning. And there I'm back to my quote of Carl Jung that I heard from Marilyn Mazur. In all chaos there is a cosmos, in all disorder a secret order. So let's try to detect this order and these structures. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Markus. So time for questions. Who is first? Okay, Mark first and then Patrick. Yeah, Mark.
All right. Hi, Marcus. That school that you described with the Agile, with the Scrum software and so on, it sounds fascinating. But as fascinating as it is, I would be nervous sending my own kids there. So, so that's the question. Why? Why should I be so nervous? And maybe I'm too conservative.
No,
what would you do with your own kids?
Absolutely. I think that's exactly the experience the people that set up the schools, the teachers had with. So the main problem was to convince the parents to send their children there. The point is very simple. Of course, the first thing they had to do is to show that they fulfill the curricular structure. So that is your first doubt as a parent, probably. Now, but what you see already now after the first year, they had 100%. So 100% of the students made the school year. They never had this before, and this is a lot of things changed. And yeah, so the main barrier is to convince the parents. I absolutely agree. The interesting thing is that as soon as they understand the principle that we change from a summative assessment to a continuous feedback process and reflection process, and that the teachers, this is, by the way, the second biggest barrier, to change their approach, this completely changed the whole system.
Yeah. Patrick?
Well, this wasn't my question, but I visited High Tech High in San Diego, which has a sort of similar thing, and the sort of shock for me visiting that was my daughter is 15, she's doing is it 14 GCSEs, 14 subjects in a normal school in the UK. There they had 2 subjects, so that was all they did, 2 subjects, and you integrated everything. That's good. My question was actually about so the challenge we have as open universities and actually operating at a distance. And so you're talking a lot about space and sort of how we organize things. Are you seeing sort of techniques you can bring across from that into how we can organize sort of the way in which we teach en masse? And I know you're looking at work in sort of MOOCs and the massive scale. Are you sort of seeing how to take design lessons across to there?
I mean, of course, this will be a separate thing to talk about. But I think the interesting linkage you can see immediately is also the way how they work. Basically, the students in this case, and that applies also what we try to apply now in our redesign for our learning environment at the Open Universität, is you can work independently, you have to work independently, you plan your own process, you get a lot of freedom, but that also leads to that you take ownership of your own learning process. But it's like, it's a very delicious balance you need to find for the instructional design, I would think. Yeah. But yeah.
Okay, so just we stop now because we really need to move on with the program. So thanks again, Max, for this exciting program.